Ayo, 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 ayo. Welcome to the Standard 81 podcast. My name is Sincere, and I'm back in this thing for y'all. And we're going to be talking today. We're going to be talking just a little bit. But before we get started or anything, let's go ahead and take a quick 30-second break so that we can get our minds right. And then I'll be back with you in 3, 2, and we are back. Perfect. All right. So, before we get into this let me first say, please go ahead and give me that thumbs up. And second, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd greatly appreciate it. It helps me to get out to more people. It helps the content to get out to more people so that I can spread the word in perspectives in which I see it. I know a lot of people are doing this, but I feel like I have something to contribute, just like everybody else does. And also, share this with somebody who you think needs it, as well as comment down below on what your opinion is on what I am talking about. Now that all the business is out of the way, let's get to the topic of the day, which is, what are you willing to sacrifice? I'll say it one more time. What are you willing to sacrifice? Now, before I go into this, let me say this is the reason I came up with this topic is I see a lot of people talking about success and how to get success and what success is in marriage and relationships. And of course, I am a channel that talks about relationships and that talks about things that are going on in life and stuff like that. So some of my topics can vary, but it's all going to corner back to the one thing that I feel is the most important, which is Christ Jesus and our relationship with him ultimately being the thing that I want to promote the most. Having said that, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice? Now, before we go into the few points that I have, I want to read the definition of the word sacrifice. And if you see the thumbnail, you've already seen this definition, but I am a big proponent of words. Oh, and P.S., if you want to join the conversation, the link is in the comment section there in YouTube. I'm hoping that it's also there in Facebook and as well as X, formerly known as Twitter, and you can join the conversation as well. So just use that link. Click on and just wait a little bit, and I'll gladly bring you into the conversation. Greatly appreciate it. Let's continue forward. Anyways, here it is. Here's the definition. It's an act of giving up something valued for the sake or the regard of something more valuable or more worthy. Now, I'm going to say this. It is consistent throughout life that people that have accomplished anything great or of infamy have had to sacrifice something in order to get where they are. And it is also widely known, in order to develop a healthy relationship, you have to sacrifice. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because there is this logic, or should I say lack of logic, there's this delusion out there that nowadays, because of technology and all the advancements in education and stuff we have, you don't have to give up anything in order to get, you can have it all. I am here to tell you that is a no. That is a no. That is a straight up and down no. You do have to give up in order to get. The question becomes, what are you willing to sacrifice? All right, so let's get into this first point. Let's get into this first point. And I kind of jotted down a few points on my phone, which I wanted to. So, what do you think? What do you think it takes? What do you think it means to sacrifice? Right now, we read the definition of it: giving up something of value in order to get something greater. Now, most people, when it comes to sacrifice, they try to think of the most minimal thing that they can give up in order to get the most optimal thing that they can get. That's called risk analysis, right? But in order to accomplish something great, or in order to achieve a, a vast myriad of success, you have to give more than the minimum. So you got to begin to change the way you think about sacrifice. If you say that I am only going to give of myself the bare minimum, I'm only going to try so hard, I'm only going to expect minimum results, expect little to no results. Now, I can understand. Here's the thing that I think some of these is that some of these people get where you can get lost a little bit. Just because you start out small doesn't mean you're not giving effort, right? Just because you don't have everything right away doesn't mean you're not sacrificing maximum effort or maximum amount of stuff. It just means that you don't have a lot to give at that time. So you may be giving in more areas, maybe more of your time, maybe more of your mental capacity, maybe more of your spirit. This comes into aspects of all things, whether you're trying to accomplish something great or whether you're trying to build a solid relationship, right? So you got to ask yourself, what is it you're thinking about when you're going into these things? If you're constantly thinking about what I can gain, 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 what can I gain, you are not going to get anything because you're never going to think to sacrifice anything. You're always going to be selfish. You're always going to be thinking about you. You're always going to be thinking about what it is you want. And until you start thinking about the other components, which is helping, how can I help? How can I move forward? How can I help uplift? Or what is it I need to coax people into doing? Then you're never gonna accomplish anything of status. You're never gonna accomplish greatness. You can forget about it. Think about it. In order to get where you got today, you had to sacrifice something, unless you haven't got anything. Then it's pretty obvious you haven't been willing to sacrifice anything at all. But I would suspect for most of us, even though we don't have all the things and all the stuff that we see maybe on social media and things and propaganda that's being promoted through the media, at some point we had to sacrifice in order to get the stuff that we wanted, or to get the stuff that we need, or to build that relationship we've always desired. The component of sacrifice is always going to be there. Whether you see the sacrifice up front in your face, or you do it behind the scenes where nobody is watching, there's always a component of sacrifice. Always. So what is it you are thinking about? Right? So that's kind of the first point. I'm gonna close that out. Are you really good as you think you are? And I know this ties right into the last point. Most of us think we have it together. Most of us, and this contributes to why we don't sacrifice as much as we could. Most of us think we got our lives together. We got everything together. We just need to make a few minor adjustments and we're good. Let's think about it, especially in the Black community. We call ourselves divine and kings and queens and how we're all connected to the spiritual. I'm here to tell you, you don't know anything until you actually get connected to the divine. And I mean God. I mean knowing the Lord, knowing Jesus, who Jesus Christ is. And then you realize how much you have to really sacrifice. Then you realize how insignificant your contribution to all this really is. Then you realize that you've got to give up your whole life in order to get something. It's time for us to start thinking of ourselves as less. Because when you think of yourself as higher than or above where you're at, then you're never sacrifice. You will never sacrifice because you feel no need to. If you have it all, what need is there to sacrifice? If you good as you are, what sacrifice do you need to give in order to get what it is? If you feel like you have accomplished more or without giving up a ton of stuff, if you had option after option with doing little to nothing, what do you feel you need to sacrifice at that point? Ultimately, it's nothing. But don't let me tell you, look at the outcomes of your life. Look at where you're at. Look at where you aspire to be. Look at the people you aspire to be like and ask yourself, what did they have to do in order to accomplish certain things? Or am I willing to do that? I'm going to give you positive and negative examples, right? A lot of exposure is going on in the year 2024. And as we can see, celebrities and rappers and media moguls are willing to sacrifice their dignity and respect behind the scenes in order to get celebrity status. What are you willing to sacrifice? People are now are willing to be seen as less than a human being, but still wanting to be respected in order to gain some kind of fame and notoriety. You see up front what they have to sacrifice, but you don't think about it until you actually sit down and people start telling you, and life begins to show you that you had to do something in order to get, or until you get, until infamy hits and you want to change And now all of a sudden that change is difficult. I think I talked about this young lady once, and I'm just using her as a reference. There was a OF girl who then got baptized and so supposedly has changed her life and has now become a Christian. And she's still finding it very challenging and difficult for people to see her beyond what she did before. But what she forgot is she was willing to sacrifice in the beginning her self-respect and her dignity in order to accumulate the things of this world, in order to fulfill an empty part of her soul that she thought was missing. So there's a sacrifice. The Bible even talks about it as Christians. You have to be willing to sacrifice all in order to follow Christ. Mother, father, sister, brother. He says all of it. He wants all of it, not just a little bit of it, all. And the problem is we only want to sacrifice for so much. Here's a biblical story to illustrate my point. Y'all all know this story. If you're a Bible believing Christian and you read the Bible at least once, you know this story. I promise you. The rich young ruler. The young ruler comes up to Jesus while he sees him and he says, "What do I need to do in order to inherit heaven?" And Jesus says, "You know the commandments." He says, "Honor your mother and your father," and so on and so on. I'm getting to the point of this. And he says, "Master, I have done all that since I was a little boy. What else do I need to do?" He said, "Great, you did it. You did all that, and it's great. You did all that. Here's what you need to do in order to obtain heaven. You got to sell all that you have, give it to the poor, and follow me." And at that, he turned away and left. Sad. Because that was too much to sacrifice. He's like, "Yeah, I'm willing to sacrifice this, this, and this, but I ain't willing to sacrifice all of that." Once again, what are you willing to sacrifice? Ladies, you say you want a good man. You say you want a provider. You say you want, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to get that man? Man, you say you want a good woman and you say you want her to be submissive. What are you willing to sacrifice in order to have that? You say you want to be successful. You say you want to be great. You say you want to follow after the Lord with your whole heart and your whole mind. What are you willing to sacrifice? Think about it. Think about it. A favorite verse of mine that is always ringing out in my mind. Here's a late is, first before you do something, count the cost. And too many of us don't count the cost before we do something. What are you willing to sacrifice? The followers of Christ were willing to sacrifice their lives in order to follow the Messiah. They were willing to lay aside all that they had in order to follow the Messiah, even to die. And some of them died gruesome deaths. The majority of them did. Martyrs for their cause. What are you willing to sacrifice? Some of us ain't even willing to sacrifice 5 minutes. Some of us are not willing to sacrifice going without. And where there is no sacrifice, there is no getting. where you are not willing to push something aside in order to get something of greater value, you can forget getting what it is you think is important. Let's get to the last point. And here's my last point here. No one can serve two masters, and I'm wrapping up. You got to figure out, as you're sacrificing, what are you sacrificing for? You're either sacrificing for things of this world, for yourself, or for something that is far above you. Now, as a Christian, I sacrifice my life to Christ, even though I do not do everything right, even though some of my thoughts are wrong, even though I have not done everything right. But as I grow my relationship with the Lord, I realize I have to sacrifice more because I thought I had it together all at one point. I thought I had done enough until I continue to read and realize and see that what I have given is not enough yet. Christ gave his life, and he said, no servant is above his master. No servant is above his master. And if he gave his life, what makes you think you won't? I'm translating that. The Bible also says this: you cannot serve two masters. You either love one and hate the other. You either serve one and get rid of the other. I'm translating that. Who are you serving? If your whole life is on a money chase and on a chase of things, then you're going to sacrifice it all in order to get those things. And when you're left unfulfilled and not happy, well, joyful. Let me say that, joyful. Then you'll look at and be like, what did I do all this for? Who are you sacrificing for? What are you sacrificing for? If you're merely chasing experiences in religion and stuff like that, you're going to find yourself frustrated because you'll never be able to do enough work to please your God or to please God. Who are you sacrificing for? If you're working for yourself, the Bible says this: the human nature is selfish above all things. It is never satisfied. I'm literally translating that. Who are you sacrificing for? And that'll give you a big hint of where your life is going and whether your life is of value and what value you're placing on the stuff, on your life and the things that you're doing. Because ultimately you're sacrificing. And I can tell you one thing: everybody is sacrificing without even knowing it is time. Each hour, each minute, each day, each year, each month that passes, we sacrifice it. The question is, what are you doing with that time? Because out of all the things you can sacrifice for in the world, time is the one thing you can never get back. You can get money back. You can renew relationships. But the one thing you can never get back is your time. So what are you sacrificing? What are you Who are you sacrificing for? In conclusion, let me say this. What you're willing to sacrifice for is what you're willing to accomplish, what you're striving towards. If your ultimate goal is to be influential and be rich, you're going to be willing to sacrifice more for that. And if your ultimate goal is to please God and love God with your heart, mind, body, and soul, your ultimate sacrifice is going to be for that. But I will say this: the only time you're going to be willing to sacrifice beyond yourself is when you find something that is beyond you. My recommendation is always going to be look to Jesus, man. Look to Jesus. Look to God, because he's ultimately the one that created you. He is ultimately the one that knows the purpose of why you're here. Instead of looking for outside things to try to fill you and to try to bring purpose into your life, sacrifice for yourself. Be willing to sacrifice for something that means something. And when you begin to give and when you begin to sacrifice, watch things happen. And that's all I really want to say. Guys, check out the Standard 81 podcast over there on TikTok. I got a ton of videos up there. Also, check out the Instagram at Sincere the Artist, as well as Facebook. Facebook is Keith Sincere Richardson. Yeah, that's my name. I just gave that out. You can see all the links to all my different social media right there in the bio of the YouTube page, and you can click on all that. You can get in contact with me that way. Anyways, once again, like, share, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. If you are watching this after the stream, please type second watch in the comments to let me know that you are viewing this afterwards. And I will see you guys on the next one. God bless you all. Peace.